Hello, and welcome to my podcast, Good Grief. My name is Dr. Christine Malone, and in this podcast, we talk about trauma, tragedy, and survival. In each episode, I will interview someone that has gone through grief in some way, and we will discuss the impact it has had on their life. By sharing these stories, we hope that others won't feel alone should they be going through similar situations. Enjoy. Okay, listeners, thank you so much for joining me for this episode. My guest is going to tell us her story about overcoming some challenges that she's had in her life. So, guest, if you would please introduce yourself.
Yeah. Hello, Christine. Thank you so much for having me here today. Thank you. And yeah, my name is Cindy Gersch, and I'm a single mom. I live in Atlanta, Georgia, but originally from Buffalo, New York, which is where my heart will always be. People think I'm crazy because I say I'm going to actually be moving back to Buffalo in 4 years when my son graduates. Everybody's like, why would you be moving back to the snow? Like, normally people go to the South and you are going opposite. You're going back home. But honestly, I love Buffalo. I love the people there. You know, my whole family is still there. So yeah, when my son, who is 13, when he graduates, the plan is to actually go back to Buffalo where, you know, my heart is. I went to college in New York State, and you know, that's, like I said, my whole family is there and everyone is there. But I have been in Atlanta for like 17, 18 years, which is crazy how fast time goes.
Yeah.
And I ended up there because of a job, as so many people do. But I did start out my career in New York as a reporter for CBS at a small affiliate up in Watertown, New York, which what Watertown is known for is Fort Drum, which is one of a huge Army installation. It's actually the post that deploys the heaviest and the most. So I was a reporter up there for about 5 years. I'm just going to be dating myself, but I did cover September 11th, which was actually one of the reasons that I ended up getting out of reporting, because I was a military reporter. I was the military reporter up there covering Fort Drum. And when 9/11 happened, obviously, you know, they wanted me live at 6, you know, covering what are the troops going to be doing, all the things. And I actually got a phone call 5 minutes before I went live that my friend Eric, who, Jesus, I'm so sorry, I just spilled everything. My friend Eric, who worked for Cantor Fitzgerald, was missing 5 minutes before. And, you know, we know that he lost his life. And so it was very hard for me to sort of recompose myself and go live at 6 o'clock. And then, you know, 4 months after that, we started deploying troops. When you deploy troops, you have casualties. And I remember my news director saying, go speak to this spouse and ask her how she feels. The first casualty. And I was like, how do you think she feels? You know what I mean? So after that, I was like, this isn't for me. You know what I mean? This isn't the glorious entertainment, walking the red carpet sort of reporting that I thought it was going to be.
Yeah, yeah. And it goes back to kind of what we were talking about before we started recording, about how a lot of the news media want to have that sensationalism, whether it's like not really what you want. So yeah. So tell us a bit about some of the challenges that you've had. I know it started with a healthcare challenge and so on.
Yeah.
So tell us a bit about where that was, what all that was about.
Yes. So I left reporting and went into marketing, and, you know, honestly moved down to Atlanta and thought, you know, if you looked at my life, it was like the perfect life, right? Married, house in the suburbs, 2.5 kids, the dog, you know, all the things, traveling, and had really like broken the glass ceiling. I was a vice president of corporate communications for a multi-billion-dollar developer. My life really at the time was perfect in my mind. I was running marathons. I'd actually run 13 full marathons, including Boston. So I qualified and ran Boston. I'd run so many half marathons, I had lost track of it. And so again, in my mind, my life was perfect until it wasn't, right? So I had run a half marathon in Chicago. This is just to tell you how healthy I was at that time. Didn't eat meat, still don't eat meat, wasn't drinking, you know, running 70 to 80 miles a week. And a week after the half marathon, I end up in the emergency room thinking I'm having a stroke. And the doctor comes into the emergency room, and I remember it vividly. He says to me, the good news is you didn't have a stroke. The bad news is we think you have this rare disease here, but we've never even seen it here before. So we're going to ship your scans to a hospital. There's only 15 hospitals in the world that even deal with this disease. Fortunately, one is in Atlanta. Make an appointment with them. but live your life because you probably do not have this disease. So that's what I kept on doing. I was living my life. Lo and behold, I get down to Emory Hospital in Atlanta 3 months later, and I do have this disease, of course. And that is really where my life significantly changed. Because it didn't not touch one part of my life. So I was diagnosed actually 5 years and 5 days, like to the day that my dad died suddenly, which is kind of weird. So at that moment, I thought that was the biggest impact. And it was, the biggest tragedy that had happened to me. And then I got diagnosed with fibromuscular dysplasia, which is the disease that I have. And I was diagnosed, and I was trying to live with my, move on, just trying to live as like normal as possible, because that's what they tell you to do. And what we did know, but we didn't know, was that 3 months later, my husband at the time, who is active duty, was deploying for a year deployment. So about 2 months after I was diagnosed, I threw him a huge party, 350 people, all the things. Well, he left. And as soon as he left, where did these 350 people go? I don't know. They just left, right? Gone. He left. My friends were like gone, all of them. Then I was told I had 2 brain aneurysms because of this disease.
Mm.
Then I went in short-term disability and came back. And 2 days later, I lost my corporate job, right? Then I was told, because of the brain aneurysms and how this was impacting my body, I could no longer run at all. Now, as a full marathoner who had been running 70 miles a week, you talk about loss.
Yeah.
That was one of the biggest losses for me, without a doubt, because running for me was sort of my everything. It wasn't just physically, it was mentally, like my therapy. I said my dad died suddenly. The first thing I did was put on my running shoes and ran 14 miles to clear my head. So I felt at that moment I had lost every part of my identity. Like, who was I if I wasn't Cindy, who was on a plane every week, corporate Cindy wearing a business suit? Who was I if I wasn't running 70 miles a week? Like, who was I if I wasn't throwing these elaborate parties, social Cindy? Like, I legitimately felt as if I had nothing. Like, I lost everything because of this disease.
Yeah. So what have you had to change, other than the running, which I know is a big deal, but what else have you had to change in your life due to the disease?
Yeah. So I went through, like I said, my husband was gone at the time. So I had 2 kids, a 12-year-old and a 9-year-old. And I went into the deepest, darkest place I'd ever been in my life, without a doubt. I started drinking very heavily. Mind you, I didn't even drink, but I didn't know how else to deal with it. Like, I was bored. I didn't have a job. I couldn't run. I didn't have anything to do. And there was at least one night that I vividly remember where I sat in the car contemplating whether or not I should end it, like really end it, because what did I have? I didn't feel like I had anything. And if it weren't for my one girlfriend who stood by me, literally one girlfriend, I don't know if I would be talking to you. So I say all the time when I speak and in podcasts that she really helped me a lot. And this is what I tell people who feel like they're down in a place that they can't get out of. Like, if you have one dime is so much better than 10 pennies. Like, wouldn't you rather have one dime in your pocket than 10 pennies like floating around? She's my one dime. And she was really, really helped me so much. Like, she would show up at 2 o'clock in the morning with brownies because she knew I would be up, and help me get the kids ready for school. And she really helped a lot. But I think another thing that really helped me really was I was diagnosed with sepsis, and really did almost die. And when you face that, where a doctor's really is saying, like, you're going to die. Like, when I was in that car, I had control of that. When I was in a hospital, I didn't have. And it was a very scary thing. And that really changed my perspective on a lot of things. Like, I realized then, like, I have a lot to live for. You know what I mean? Yes, I have this disease. Yes, I can't, run. Yes, I lost all these friends. But you know what? I still have a lot to live for. And that really kind of woke me up and made me realize, like, I'm only 43 at the time, or 44. Like, I had a lot to live for. So
Well, and the
let's go
kids
for it.
too. I mean, not just you, but
Oh, of course.
yeah,
Yes.
for sure.
Mhm.
Yeah. Yeah, I totally understand what you mean about, things that you can control and so on. I've been there myself in my life where when I can't control things, I want to go to the thing that I can control, and
Absolutely.
like I'm a little more grounded, and that's not always the healthiest thing, but
100%. A hundred
certainly,
percent.
certainly has been an avenue that I've done as well. So lots of changes due to the diagnosis. Now, you mentioned kind of the one really good friend. Did you find that, all those changes, so you're no longer, corporate sending, all those things you're saying, that all those changes really, you found out kind of who's no longer in your life and who really
Yeah.
was only around because they wanted to be around corporate Cindy, or they wanted to be around, something else?
Yeah, I mean, I think that those friends, one of the things I was doing an interview once, and the person asked me if you could say one thing to all of there were 350 people at Kevin's going away party, that 350 people. What would you say to them? And I said, I just would ask them, like, why? Like, why did you ghost me? What did I do that is so bad? Like, they just left. Like, and that for me, I don't understand that. Like, what did I do that was so bad that made you? These are people that I was friends. Some of my friends I had known for 30 years since
Yeah.
high school.
Yeah.
And it really, like, what did I do that was so bad that made you want to be not like want to be in my life? And the reality is, Christine, is that I know that I changed. I mean, I know that I changed because when you go through a life altering thing like that,
Hmm.
you're going to change. And I know I made mistakes. I know I drank too much for a little bit. I know I said and did things I probably shouldn't have. But like, I forgave myself. I apologize. Like, and I wish they would have said to me, like, this is what you did to me, so I could apologize to them. But I don't even know what I did. So that's kind of what is very disheartening, very upsetting, still to this day to me.
Yeah, I think in my experience and from other people I've talked to as well, a lot of times people, if they just don't feel comfortable talking about whatever the change is, they do just disappear. It's like, well, I don't want to
Yeah.
talk about that. So if
Yeah.
it's uncomfortable for them, they just don't want to be around. Whereas, I mean, as I'm sure you would agree with me that it doesn't matter whether they want to, hang around and talk about it. It'd be nice people just kind of hang around and talk to me and do whatever, but not necessarily have to solve the world's problems, because
Yeah.
none of us can really do that. So
Right.
that
Right.
is sad. That is very sad. So,
It is.
how have you gone from that place, with your drinking and your, you said the good friend, but what really has pulled you from there, and then start getting into the story about what you do today? Because I know you've got a lot going on today too.
Yeah, so it definitely was the sepsis was the first thing that kind of kicked me in gear, but I realized then, like you said, I have two kids, I still had a lot to live for. And so what I started doing, journaling has helped me a ton. I can't even explain how important that was for me. That was a big thing, but also finding other people who have my disease who can relate to me. And I say this a lot because my disease is very rare. 90% of the people who have it are women. So to meet online, or where mainly online, other women who have my disease on discussion boards, to talk to them, to really like say, is this normal? Should I be feeling this way? Or just being helpful for them has made like such a change in my life,
Yeah.
because it just makes you feel like you're normal in a sense of the way. Or there's people who can understand, like, I don't feel like getting out of bed today because my legs hurt so much. Like, like just complaining or talking or feeling weak for the day, or these people really fully understand me. That has been, I cannot even begin to tell you what a help that has been. Hugely helpful. And, like meditating and manifesting, all of that really truly has been such a help for me. Um, because it's given me this strength that I'm not sure that I really had before. Because I am doing something completely different than I was. I mean, I own my own business now. It's still marketing, but it is starting to branch out a little bit more, because when I was in marketing for the 20 plus years, it was all with real estate development. Well, that's not the case anymore. I'm working with a lot of different industries, but my heart and my focus is really with nonprofits, a lot of, but people like me that have these chronic illnesses. We call each other spoonies. I'm not sure if you've ever heard of that term before.
Oh,
And it's a really interesting term. There's meaning behind it. And so I love working with spoonies because I can really relate to them. And I feel like I can help them because I speak their language and I have overcome that. And I have moved on to this sort of winning multiple awards, this award-winning marketing agency, speaking around the country, doing all the things that they could do too. Just because you're a spoonie, just because some days you can't get out of bed, does not mean that you cannot follow your dreams, does not mean that you cannot still accomplish what you want to accomplish. And I think that a lot of times they look at me as like, okay, how did you do this? And it's now I feel like it is for me to lead them and to show them how they can do it. And I love it. So
Yeah.
that's sort of how I really truly do believe that everything happens for a reason. I've said that for forever.
Yeah.
And I believe everything comes full circle. And I remember when I was sick in the hospital with sepsis and really feeling very down, like you asked me what sort of pulled myself up. And when I was running marathons, particularly when I was trying to qualify for Boston, because you have to run pretty fast for that. And I had gotten to mile 19 and I physically knew that I could do it, right? Physically, I knew my body could do it. It was mentally that I was starting to hit that wall. And that's what happened to me when I was so deep and dark in that place, was like mentally, it was what was dragging me down. Like I had to so a lot of my marathon training, it's funny how kind of pulled me out of that spot that had nothing to do with running, but it was all went back to sort of that mental training, if
Mm.
that makes any sense.
Oh,
Um,
absolutely.
yeah, so that helped me a lot. So I love that it's all sort of come full circle. And when I was first diagnosed, 5 years ago, it was all, why me? Why me? Who gets this rare disease? I'd never even heard of it. And now it's starting to make a little bit of sense.
Yeah, it's like first to speak to the group of people. I mean, anytime you have some kind of a support group where you feel like you're not the
Mhm.
only one is always helpful. I've had
Absolutely.
definitely benefited from that in my life many times. But also, I think having an experience like what you've gone through does make you more sensitive to issues such as the spoonies, which I, I wrote that down because I'm like, I got to think that.
Hmm.
But that kind of things, it kind of makes you like more able to be, empathetic or whatever to people or even companies or whatever that are in those, rare spaces or whatever. And I definitely am getting that you definitely get a sense of a reward from helping other
Yes,
people, which is huge. I mean, that's just a
absolutely.
huge part for many of us. So along those lines, tell us a bit. I know you have a TikTok channel, so tell us
Yeah.
a bit about what that is and kind of what you're starting there.
So it's kind of interesting because I started a TikTok. I was so adamant against TikTok because I was like, no, my 13-year-old, like it's for, or 16-year-old daughters on that. No way. And then I'm sort of a crime junkie as well, I'll admit. When I was a reporter, I was also the two hats I wore were military and investigative. So I actually helped free a gentleman who was wrongly convicted. He was in prison for murdering his daughter and he didn't do it. So I helped and that just got me, so I've always been this sort of true crime freak. And so I didn't have anyone to talk to about this really high profile crime that's been happening. And so my son was like, just go on TikTok, you'll find people. Next thing I know, I have like 30,000 followers in a couple months, which I guess is pretty good. And so it's been around crime. It's been around crime. But about 3 weeks ago, I had a very vulnerable moment and I was supposed to go live that night to my followers. So I knew they were going to be waiting for me at 9 o'clock at night. Well, at like 8:54, I got some horrible news delivered to me. And it was one of those things where everything had just sort of, and I said, I have to go on and tell my followers what's going on. And I was very vulnerable and I was very real and I was crying. And, I got like, there's like 40,000 people who have seen that video of me now crying. And I got like 500 DMs from people like, just, are you like the sweetest like DMs I've ever gotten, the comments. And then people saying like, we feel you. We know what they didn't even really know what was going on, just that. And they were coming to me like, we need some sort of a support group. Like, would you help me? And there were so many women who came there and said that to me that I was like, oh my God, yes. Like, I want to do that. I've announced it like 3 times now, only on TikTok, and I have 60 women who are like, yes. So I'm starting to launch a Facebook group and I'm just getting the wheels in motion, but it will be only for women, really focused on mind, body, and soul, and trying to put that together. But I'm looking at it as like a sisterhood because there's just not enough support for women, particularly in spoonies, but also mental health too for women.
Yeah, it's a stigmatized thing. We don't talk about mental health in this country anyway. I mean,
100%.
issue and
100%.
it's just
100%.
a
So
whole.
I'm still in the process of like figuring it all out because I want it to be perfect and I'm type A, but I know it's going to be, I know, and I want it to be on Facebook because it can be private, all the things. But I really think that's going to be like my next, you know what I mean? Because they came to me just from that one video
Yeah,
and I was like, okay, I think this is it. And I have one of my best friends is actually a wellness coach, a certified wellness coach. So we're sort of tag teaming it together. And I really am like, like I said, it's like when you manifest and you look for signs and signs fall in your lap, like this one sort of did. I really truly believe that.
It may morph over time from one thing to the next thing to the next thing, and you just gonna follow along and let it.
Absolutely. That's what the whole thing is with manifesting. You just sort of have to follow the signs, follow the open doors and see what happens.
I like
And
to, I like to say you have to get out of the way though. So you have to get
absolutely,
out of the
absolutely,
way.
absolutely. Yes. So I'm really excited about that. We'll see what happens. Like you said, I mean, I love anytime that I can help, particularly spoonies, I like it just, I love it. I really truly think this is what I was meant to do. I think it's why I got this disease. And like I was saying the other day on another, when I was out speaking, was I have a really loud voice. I always have. I'm not like afraid to talk in front of people or to challenge people. And so let me use it, right? Like, let me use it
Yeah.
for the people who are.
For the people who aren't, you don't have that strong of a voice or whatever, and they're gonna just tag along, which is fabulous. I know
Yeah.
you're also in the early stages of writing your book.
Yeah. So very early stages, which will be sort of an autobiography, talking very much in depth about, that coming full circle and how everything happens for a reason, because, just my life has been filled with so many interesting things. Like I ran the Boston Marathon the year after the bombing, and
Hmm.
that story in itself is
Yeah.
crazy insane. So just how my life has had all of these interesting things leading me to where I am today. But then, I want it to be a takeaway where people are like, exactly like we were talking about before. I want you to be able to take from this book, from my book, something to help you. Like if you're struggling, like I was, I want to be able people to be able to look at this book as a resource to really help them if they're in a spot like I was.
Yeah, and I mean there aren't too many of those out there, right? There's a lot of them out there, but they're all, and some of them address different issues. I had a podcast with a young man whose father went to prison when he was younger, and so kind of he talked about coming out of the
Yes,
from that, and then that's somebody's story. That's a great one to read to really get what that is and why is
absolutely.
again that whole support group thing where I'm not alone. I'm not the only one doing this, the only one feeling like this. And I think especially like the part of your story where you talked about almost feeling like ending it all to get from there to where you are today, successful and starting off on these great adventures that are going to be wonderful help to other people, is really testimony to, yeah, you know what, you can get there. You just got to grab a hold of that positive
Right.
attitude and that dime in your pocket and
Yes.
go from there and so on. So
Yes.
that's
Yes.
all. That's all great. Well,
Thank
is
you.
there anything else you'd like to share before we end today?
No, I just, one of the things I just want, if you are like a spoonie or you're just, even if you're not and you're having like a bad day, I think it's so easy to forget to allow yourself to like have grace. It's okay. Like if you are having a bad day, and we were talking a little bit about that mental health. I don't think enough of us allow ourselves the grace to, if you have to spend a Tuesday all day in bed, eating popcorn and watching Netflix, it's okay.
Yeah.
Just don't let it become an everyday habit, but
Right.
don't feel bad about it. Like I think a lot of times people feel bad about that. It's okay.
Yeah.
Like you need to be able to do that and not feel guilty about it. Just don't let it become an everyday habit. That's, I think that that's a really important message
Yeah.
that we forget. A lot of people forget. It's
I,
either they're never doing it or they're doing it too much.
yeah.
There's got to be a happy medium.
Yes, absolutely. I think you're spot on. I think a lot of people, even myself, I'll include in that bucket, feel like I have to be strong and I have to this and I have to that. And spending that day in bed
Yes.
with Netflix is like I'm a loser now, right? Or I've failed.
Right.
Or it's like
Yes.
if I do that, I can get back up and go for the next month. But it's that mental health day, right? It's like you
100%.
have to take care of your mental health, and so many. And I know I have male listeners too, but so many women. We just want to do it all for everybody, and so therefore you don't take care of your own needs. The kids come first, the grandkids, the
Absolutely.
whatever, and that's fine. I think that's how the woman's brain is wired. But
It
on
is.
the other hand, it is also can be very defeating too, and lead us to a space of not being very healthy.
A
Um,
million
right.
percent. A
So.
million percent.
Mhm.
Yes.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for joining me today, Cindy. It has been
Thank
a
you, Chris.
pleasure to hear your story, and I am definitely going to look up your TikTok channel, which I know nothing about TikTok, so I'll have to have my teenager show me how to do that. So
Neither did I. But now I'm like, I love it. There's such great fun videos at it. Like that's now my vice. Like I will sometimes be laying in bed. I'm like, I got to turn it off. Okay, it's too late. Go to bed because there's some
Yeah,
funny videos on there.
yeah.
But yeah,
So I didn't. The only social media I spent any time on is Facebook and LinkedIn. Anything else, I'm like, so what is that used for? So what
I know. Believe me, I get it.
Instagram. So Instagram is what, just photos. What is it? Yeah, I'm way behind the times, but
I get it.
yeah. Again,
Like
why you
that.
bring your teenager into this room and say, "Show me this," and don't make fun of
Yes,
me because I taught you how to use a spoon. So don't. Yeah.
exactly.
Okay,
Yes.
Cindy, thank you so much. You have
Thank
a
you.
great rest of your day.
You as well. Thank you so much.
Thank you for listening to this episode of Good Grief. To hear more about my personal story, please pick up a copy of my book, The Day I Became the Spider Killer, a memoir of trauma, tragedy, and survival, available in paperback, Kindle, and Audible via Amazon, Barnes & Noble, and other online book retailers.